All right. For the latest episode of my illustrious podcast, I'm joined with Ulrik Soderstrom. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and James Quinlan, the co-founders of Leerly. James and Ulrik were introduced to me by Rohan Arora, who I had on the second episode, one of the co-founders of Startup Starters. So, the world of entrepreneurship is a kind one where people foster connectivity and help each other out, as you can tell. So part of the reason why I like it so much. Anyway, Ulrik, James, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate you guys taking out the time.
Likewise. Yeah. Thanks so much for having us on.
So to get started, I'm a little bit acquainted with Leerly. I mean, I looked you guys up. Rohan pointed me towards you guys, but it'd be great if we could dive in by just telling us what it is you guys do.
You want to take it on?
Sure. So, yeah, Leerly is a platform, it's a website for filling the gap for intermediate language learners. So once someone is done with their journey on Duolingo or similar apps that are built for beginners and just reviewing basic vocab, there's very little content available on the internet to improve past that point. So most people read children's books or watch Netflix shows with subtitles. And this is a problem that both James and I had encountered on our own learning journeys and had built Leerly up to fill the gap. So all of our content is written and recorded by native speakers.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So yeah, at first glance, I had thought it might be like a translation service, but it's I guess you could describe it as like ed tech, right? It's really kind of, as you put it, to take that next step in your Spanish language learning. Is that how you guys met each other and decided to do this together? Just kind of as Spanish students, or?
No, Ulrik and I had worked, we have a mutual friend who introduced us a few years ago, and we had worked on a couple projects in the past. And so when I decided to take a stab at Leerly, as soon as I figured, oh, hey, it's probably worth trying to spin this into something that can make money, I reached out to Ulrik and talked him into joining our next venture together. I feel like we're always bouncing ideas back and deciding which one to pick up. So, yeah.
Yep.
Always a great reason to go into something.
Yeah, right.
It's not all about the money, but it matters. So I certainly can't fault you for that. So I guess, how did you come up with the specific approach you're taking towards enhancing Spanish language? I mean, you're starting with Spanish. I presume maybe you'll go into more languages when the time comes, but it seems like it's a different approach than just have someone kind of tutor you either remotely or in person, right? So I guess you could tell me about kind of the unique way you guys do it and sort of how you came up with that idea specifically.
Yeah, totally. So the idea sort of came out of, Ulrik had mentioned, we both spend a fair amount of time learning languages. I've been learning Spanish for a while, and it's sort of, the idea was brewed out of this experience of, like Ulrik said, finishing sort of introductory material on Spanish. Like Duolingo is the classic. Everybody knows Duolingo. If you have like one language learning app on your phone, it's Duolingo. Sure. But after finishing that, the sort of like landscape for continued Spanish content at a beginner or intermediate level is effectively desolate. There's very little there. So you can have very basic material or really advanced material, like watching Narcos on Netflix in Spanish, which you're never going to be able to understand if you just finish Duolingo. It's going to take a long time to get there. So it would be great if there was something in the middle, something that was useful, like we can actually consume content that interests us. We don't have to watch like kids shows in Spanish, but at the same time isn't like super advanced, maybe isn't necessarily like full speed native speakers talking. So yeah, the idea was sort of like, how do we do that? And the approach is really simple. It was born out of a little bit of research I was doing on something called automatic language growth, which is basically the school of language learning, which says that the really only true way to reach fluency is to solely rely on input. And basically wait a few years before you decide to attempt speaking the language that you've been learning. Rather, just listen and read as much as you can. The idea being to sort of challenge this conception that children or babies somehow have this like genetic predisposition to learning language. Followers of automatic language growth kind of reject that idea, and they say, well, the only real difference is that there's no expectation that a baby is going to try to speak for a long time. All they do is consume day in and day out. So we wanted Leerly to just be that. Like, we want you to read Spanish and we want you to listen to Spanish, but we don't really want you to necessarily do anything outside of that. So we try to make the articles stuff that you would hopefully already read or find interesting. We choose articles from popular websites around. And yeah, we just offer you Spanish at an intermediate level, and you can sort of decide what that role or what role that will play in sort of your journey of Spanish learning. Yeah. It's just a good resource that you can rely on as much as you want.
James touches on something very interesting, which is there's a lot of criticism around Duolingo as well and similar platforms, not only in terms of the gamification, but of the effectiveness of the learning style. So there's a claim that Duolingo makes that 34 hours of Duolingo is the equivalent of one college course in a language. And there's a professor who tested that and did 34 hours and then took an exam, intro exam for that language and failed. So there is something that needs to change in the way that we're approaching languages outside of just being a fun app that's giving you metrics that you can be proud of.
Sure, which you can just get lost in and mistake for actual progress that isn't in fact progress.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's so frustrating, like hoping you get excited, you just learn so much stuff or so much new vocabulary, and you like attempt to use it in a conversation, and you realize like, oh, people don't talk like that. Like, this is not how a native Spaniard is ever going to speak Spanish. And that could be really disheartening. So we're trying to alleviate some of that.
Gotcha. No, I haven't heard you guys expand upon it. It is definitely, I'm now finding it more exciting. I've never been much of a language student outside of English, but I do have a particular love of vocabulary and adding new SAT words. People sometimes describe my speech as. So, I can understand the passion for it. I also like, the learning experience you guys have had kind of about the human mind and learning in general, right? It seems like you guys take the position, having learned about it, that the sponginess of a child's mind doesn't really go away as we get older. And that's kind of, that's the premise you guys are kind of building upon, which I find particularly interesting. Also, I'm a big Narcos fan, so would love to be able to watch, the shooting and fighting a little more closely, not have my eyes glued onto the subtitles. Would prefer Narcos as a teaching tool rather than like Dora the Explorer, so.
Exactly. Although, I watch a lot of kid shows in Spanish still, so I can't really talk.
No kidding. You find they're still kind of informative?
Oh yeah, I rip through Peppa Pig in Spanish when the mood strikes me. Yeah, it's just good to not always have to do that. If I want to read an article for adults, I can do that in Spanish too now, so that's good.
So we won't knock kids shows. It's just good to expand your horizons beyond.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. I'm kind of curious, beyond your own experience, did you guys before or or as you're doing this, speak to Spanish language students to kind of validate the need and that this had legs, that this could work for them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and one it's kind of ongoing as well. So we work with two translators in Spain that currently write the articles and do the translations and summarizations. So they've found it very effective in their own journeys. And then we have been running ads for Leerly, which is often considered like a debt or a pain point of a bad product. And we've seen really good engagement through those ads, like 30 cents or 20 cents a click, but we don't convert any customers through that at all, through that pipeline. But we do go on language learning subreddits and Facebook groups, and those are the real students that we interact with. And that's where we see a lot of signups coming through for Leerly. So those are people really in the weeds of trying to grow and trying to find reading materials and listening materials. So really good conversion engagement there.
The first sort of day I decided, oh, I want to attempt this. I think it would be a good idea. It was basically like, I was imagining what's the ultimate tool for reading Spanish, because I read Spanish books on a Kindle, and you can like click and highlight words right there. And I was like, this is great, but like I don't want to read Harry Potter, even though I love Harry Potter. Like I want to read other stuff. So I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. So I just posted. I'm pretty active on the Learn Spanish subreddit, and so I just posted. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about this thing. Do you think that'd be useful? And there were like, I don't know, maybe like 20 people that were like, oh my God, that would be amazing. You should totally do that. And I was like, all right, like that doesn't mean much. Like, this hypothetical app that doesn't exist, people are excited about. But I was like, all right, maybe it's not a terrible idea. And a few of those people actually ended up becoming our first customers, because as soon as we launched it, I DM'd them on Reddit and I was like, hey, a month ago you posted saying this thing would be cool, and like I actually did it. Like here it is. Like, you can sign up. And we gave them like a steep discount or a free account. I can't remember, but that ended up being sort of like where we got our first 2 or 3 paying customers.
Yeah.
Turns out Reddit feedback is more than just finding the latest meme stock and shooting it to the moon. You can actually do product market fit validation.
You don't have to crash the financial market if you don't want to. Yeah.
you just disrupt the language learning market.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna. That segued nicely into what was gonna be my next question about promoting your business and getting clients. It looks like you're, just kind of building a little bit of brand equity through the paid ads. Which, I mean, there's hundreds of billions or however much money being spent on that. So I guess it's not, Ulrik, as you put it, always a bad sign of a bad business, let's say.
Yeah.
But really, the paying customers have come through more like organic outreach and just connecting with people.
Yeah, actually entirely from organic outreach and connecting with people. As I mentioned, we haven't seen any conversion as far as we can tell from those different ad points. So, and even in the conversations we have on these, Facebook learning groups or Reddit threads, when we're very honest about, hey, we're a young startup, we built this platform to solve our own problem, and it's something that we're passionate about, that's really what people connect and respond to, rather than coming in with a very salesy pitch and sort of spamming, the link and coupon codes and things. So it's that human approach that is absolutely the most effective in drawing people in.
Yeah, I think it was like
James.
we would spend, I don't know, like we'd spend $100, we'd get X amount of like thousands of click-throughs. We wouldn't really see any conversions from that. And then it's like every week I would post a free Leerly article on the Learn Spanish subreddit. And just be like, hey, working on this app, here's a free article. Like, let me know if you like it. And we almost always got at least one customer per post. And I was like, this is a way, way better use of time. Like, it's free and we're actually making money on it. So it was a no-brainer after that.
It turns out there's something to be said for treating people like people instead of just dollar signs.
Yep.
or at least letting them think you do care about them as people and getting that personal touch. All right, great. Well, I'm glad that's been working out for you. It seems like you're at least enjoying that approach, connecting with people and stuff like that. And it's there's a satisfaction I detect coming through and actually providing some real value. So I'm glad that's off to a great start. To kind of change tacks a bit, I'd like to hear kind of from your perspective what you consider like the biggest challenge you guys have faced so far, and what you're doing or have done to overcome it.
I have my answer, but you can start if you have one, Ulrik.
Go ahead, James. Kick it off.
Okay. I was just gonna say, this is like, in a way, I always tell Ulrik, like, I think I have the easier job. I'm the main programmer for it, and Ulrik is responsible for all of that. So all of like the marketing and growth and stuff. And so, I'm a software engineer professionally. So it's like, there's not really a hard part of building out Leerly. Like writing the actual code stuff has been very straightforward because I spend, 8 hours a day at my job doing that anyway. But what surprised me actually about hard maybe is like the wrong way to describe it. More hard emotionally, I guess, or more stressful kind of is like we pay translators to do the articles every week, numerous articles every week. So they do the summarizing. They find the articles, they summarize them in English and translate them to Spanish and then simplify the language. And they're also friends of mine. Like I lived in Spain a few years ago and I reached out to them. Yeah. And I was like, hey, do you guys want to work on this project? And so we pay them every month on top of the actual money that all the money that comes into Leerly right now is also going to them so that they can, have a decent wage. But it's stressful being responsible for getting that money to somebody and having them, like that pays their rent. And it's stressful to have to consider that. Like there's a part of this person's livelihood that is already coming from the project. And right now it's mostly coming out of our pocket. So I'm not like super worried about it, but like, yeah, there is something there that's not sort of like businessy. It's not techy. It's sort of like this person will hopefully pay rent and Leerly will hopefully be a part of that. And there's just like that stress to keep it running for that alone.
Sure. Before you add in Ulrik, I just want to say I think that's very understandable. In my experience speaking to entrepreneurs, what I've learned is a lot of the times the biggest challenges are those kind of emotional tolls that, you have to be empathic as a leader. You guys obviously are, and that's how you've reached out to your customers, but you also have that empathy for your employees as well. And being concerned how the trajectory of the company impacts them is naturally it's gonna weigh on your conscience. So that's completely understandable. So I appreciate your candor. Ulrik, I'd like to hear your perspective on that question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What James said is certainly number one, and we've tried to design the company to grow in the long run to really support anyone we have on the team. So it's profit sharing, meaning any equity that you have, you get that percent of profits. So we want to have the translators in the long run that we currently have run entire language categories into the future. So also, really making sure they're bought into the project and really happy and motivated in that space as well is a big push. And the second, I think, biggest obstacle or pain point that we felt is sort of moving out of what's called the trough of sorrow for startups. When you first launch, it's very exciting. You're building this new product. And for us, one of the biggest things that we're very excited about is that this is something we need. We know this product market fit because it's something that we've desired in our own life. And we're seeing that from the customers that we're interacting with and the other learners. But there's a long period of time where you have a slow trickle, maybe 10% or less growth per week before you hit that big spike of users. And so sort of pushing through this period to get to that really hyper accelerated growth. You have to stay focused and keep your morale up around that.
It sounds like it's easy to get kind of discouraged or, like you said, the morale can fall. I'm kind of like, how do you guys deal with that? How do you just push through or, keep the spirits up, so to speak?
Yeah, I think James and I remain excited at all times, and we love sort of hacking on projects and building this up. It's a hobby for us. And we've worked on 2 projects prior to this and have a lot of lessons from those as well that may be interesting. But keeping the team excited, we just had a meeting with our team a few days ago just to discuss, hey, we're going to sort of renegotiate the way we're paying you guys to essentially give you all of the revenue that's coming in just to keep the excitement and commitment up. And then once we hit a certain breaking point, we'll return to our original profit sharing model and switch how we're handling our revenue.
I think like in terms of managing it and sort of like staying focused, I think the team meetings, which we do every week, play a big role into that, even if we don't necessarily have a lot of updates. It's just good to get all of us on a call. They're also my friends in Spain who I haven't seen in a long time and I miss them. And it's like a good easiest to chat with them.
Yeah.
So that sort of keeps that feeling of like, hey, we're in this together, every week we're kind of going through this. But also a big part is knowing just when not to work. Like if I just don't want to hack on Leerly one night, just allowing the freedom to not feel guilty about it and just be like, you know what, I've had a crappy couple days. I'm just gonna not code on Leerly. Like I'll code on something that I want, or like I'll play video games and not really worry about it. And that sort of management of burnout is, it's the only way to do it. Like I feel like every time I've tried to force myself into that mindset of like, sort of like begrudgingly doing the work, even when I'm really not in it that day, just ends up backfiring the next day or down the road. And I found, just working on it when it excites you is the only way to do it, and hope that it continues to excite you. And it totally has. Like there's always stuff. Every time I've gone through a lull and like, oh, I'm worried about Leerly, this is stressful, I don't know if it's gonna work, we're doomed. There's always like some little bit of news, like Ulrik has great success on a campaign, or like I figure out how to build this awesome feature I'm really excited on. It sort of revamps everything, and then I'm just like, to the moon with everything. Let's go, 100%.
There's some really interesting answers in there. I mean, Ulrik, I really liked your answer because it speaks to a kind of universal truth. I mean, that really, through those emotionally trying times, you need support from your fellow humans, the people that are invested in this, and that's why building a supportive culture where everyone feels like they have a stake, where they contribute, and where they matter is so important. James, what you mentioned, I think is a little less common, and that's kind of why I liked it so much. It's like sometimes to really step out of the entrepreneur's shoes, just be like a normal person for a day, like go play some video games. And that can be something that's easy to forget about when you hear like Elon Musk or whoever say, oh, I work 100 hours a week all the time. I'm always like, this is my life is all Tesla, or it's all this or that. And it's like, well, that's actually not healthy to be on all the time. Like sometimes just be something else. Step away. It's not to diminish the importance of hard work, but like sometimes step away, because there's diminishing returns in how much you put into a startup. If you are doing it, James, as you said, while feeling burnout, while feeling under duress, the quality of your work is going to suffer, and that helps nobody. So very interesting perspective. I appreciate you guys sharing that with me. Has there anything, happened yet that you guys really did not expect? And, if so, kind of how did you deal with it, or how did that sort of play out?
I think for me, it was that we made any amount of money. Like the fact that we have any customers, I'm just like, what? Like, oh my God, like I can't believe like this is insane. I don't know. It was like, I've worked on so many harebrained, stupid ideas, and Ulrik and I have like hacked on projects before that went nowhere, even though we had the most like grand visions. So when we launched and like strangers paid us, I was just blown away. Like I could not believe that, which I feel like is probably like a cliche answer, but like, totally true. Like the fact that a stranger gave me some of their hard-earned money is insane. And then I immediately get stressed, and I'm like, oh God, now I have to like make sure they're happy and they feel like they're getting their money's worth. And so
that's, I don't care if it's cliche or not, as long as it's honest. Like that's what matters. And that was pretty honest. Good lesson in there too is, don't, when you get money, don't go and just blow it all on, booze and celebration and stuff, because there's still work to be done.
Exactly.
So, how about you, Ulrik? Anything that kind of wowed you, or just you didn't expect?
Exactly what James said. The fact that we have any customers at all, and we've built 2 projects that come to mind prior to this where we've gotten a little farther each time, but this is the first time we've had paying customers for a product. Wow. And that was one of the goals at the heart of Leerly when we started. It's like, hey, we want something that is solving a real problem that we can bring to market directly and see if it works or not without taking fundraising value or anything, and really validate it.
Sorry, I forgot. You said, just reminded me of our last project was something called The Bit, which was a platform for teaching young women how to program outside of like conventional CS degrees and stuff like that. But after that sort of like went under right before COVID, actually, the timing was great. They're like, James, quit your job. And I was like, okay. And then COVID hit and I was like, I'm so glad I didn't. But after that project went under, we were like, dude, like the next thing we work on, we have to make $5 before we do anything. We were like, we're not investing any of our time into a project until we make $5 on it. And like, as soon as we did that with Leerly, we were like, oh man, there's something here.
Another big milestone too in that user journey is we recently looked at our Firebase data. So meaning looking at who's visiting what pages and maybe how many vocab cards they have or how often our users are really using it, or they just sign up and forget that they're paying $5 a month for Leerly. We noticed that we have a good amount of super users who have dozens of vocab cards and are really spending time on Leerly throughout the week consistently. And that is also very exciting because the bit, as James mentioned, we got signups. It was a free platform, but nobody continued to use the platform. Nobody really returned. We never really had great adoption. And there were a lot of inherent, sort of technical marketing flaws that we needed to work through that we never did. That may have helped improve that. But we really didn't have a product that was solving a problem. We built something amorphous that was very interesting, but was not inherently useful.
Yeah, we have like the opposite problem now where I check our user metrics all the time, just like, how many minutes has somebody spent listening to the Spanish, or how many vocab words did they save, or whatever. And there are so many. We have like, I don't know, so many. We have like a handful of customers who have their metrics are like higher than mine. Like they've listened more than me, or they've read more than me. And I'm just like competitive. I'm like, dude, I made this. Like you can't use it more than me. Like, who do you think you are? So that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Well, you're spending all this time working on the platform. I mean, you're more stressed for time than they are. So,
dude, that makes me think that competitive nature. We should build something into Leerly where it's like you can see who's reading how much and sort of like keep up to date.
This is the mind of an entrepreneur, guys. The idea is just
coming. We've talked a lot about.
I can relate to how you're feeling about the metrics. Sometimes I'll look at the site. I'm like, whoa, 6 pages today? Like I got 6 views. Awesome. Like I'm blown away. So it's but it's great that you got those like power users. It seems like Pareto's law is kind of playing out there. 80% is being used by 20% of people, which I guess since it's so common, that's a sign that this has real value. So
totally.
Good, all good stuff there. Is there anything you guys have learned since going through this that you kind of wish you had known beforehand? I mean, maybe not because you this is your third endeavor, but maybe there is. If there is, could you talk me through that?
Taking a look at our past endeavors compared to this one, the main point is what we already mentioned, which is wanting something that we can validate right away and bring to market and know if people are really willing to pay and to use it. The second is something we don't have an answer on yet. And what we were just talking about with the gamification, Duolingo is sometimes more of a game than it is a learning app with the incentives and sort of the dopamine release of getting to a certain streak and showing that off. But there's a lot of loss there as well, where you're going back into old lessons that you don't need to review necessarily and redoing them rather than moving forward. That's, I think, could be improved upon. So one of our current discussions is how much do we gamify this? How many metrics do we give the reader? What's really valuable and what's fake, and really just trying to get people addicted to the platform. And we want to make it honest and make it useful and respectable.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because it's almost kind of like this push and pull between like keeping it the boring thing I in my heart know it should be. And what I mean by that is like at the core of automatic language growth, what you have is like, hey, read a lot. That's it. you don't even have to understand all of it. Like just hearing the patterns of the language, just expose yourself to it. Just listen, like just consume it. It's like outside of that, you don't need anything. And so the features that we add, I feel like we're very kind of careful about. And I know I dog food them all the time because this is like the app I made for myself of like, I want to be consuming more Spanish. Like, how do I do that? So it's like, we're constantly testing to make sure, hey, is this thing like actually aligned with that? Like, is this actually going to increase the chances that somebody can improve their Spanish? Rather than, just improve engagement. And I think that that's just a conversation that we have. Like minutes ago, I was riffing like, oh, what if we had sort of like, you could expose the metrics of other users and sort of provoke this like element of competition. But it's like, I don't know if that's like, I'd have to think a long time about, is that something that we really want? Like, is that the right signal that we should be sending to our customers? Is like, other people are learning more than you. Like, what are you doing? It's like, no, it's not about that. You know, it's just about your own journey and learning the language. So,
no, fair enough. I mean, gamification, it's great. I mean, it's so common because, it rewards people psychologically, which they look forward to, which provides them motivation. But at the end of the day, it's not a game. It's a learning experience. So, we're not, you can go anywhere else and play games. That totally makes sense. So is there a way like, or rather, forget that. I was going to go off on a tangent there. I guess I am curious, like, what are you guys cooking up for? Obviously you've got translation of articles. Is the path forward just, more content for people to learn from, or additional method of learning? I guess, what do you guys have in mind?
That's a great question, and something we talk about frequently. We have a spreadsheet of all these ideas we've come up with that we've just taken a look at, what levers they would pull in terms of growth. And I got lost in thinking about, this user journey and consumer funnel of engagement and then conversion. And I frequently try and push my brain back to, okay, what matters is that the product is useful. Like that will create super users that will go out and tell their friends about our product. And that's been, I think, some of my favorite moments is I have a friend, Emma Pollock, who reached out, said, hey, I love Leerly, and I showed it to my friend Allison, and she signed up. And that's happened on a few occasions, and is the most beautiful moment for us. So sort of returning to the core value offer. Something we're discussing right now is, can we have not only audio recordings of articles that we have now, but can we also have like videos of conversations about the article between the translators that are, sort of short, scripted things like sort of iPhone, FaceTime conversations, and how can that be valuable to learning journey as well, to increase that feeling of immersion? Because one of our big value propositions is that everything is written by a native speaker. So it's much better than plugging anything into Google Translate, which will mistranslate things and miss sort of local idioms and the like.
Yeah, that was actually something I had wanted to ask you about. Given the amount of translation services, I guess where the added value comes from the native speakers, and it's like really the mistakes aren't made that can throw you off. It seems like, as well as adding actual natural flavor to it in the form of like colloquialisms. And,
exactly. I think I see that as kind of like one of our moats, right? Like, not that we necessarily have to be too considerate about how defensible our business position is, but like, hopefully one day we will. But for right now, I'm not too concerned. But like, I see the fact that it's not automated as like very much one of the moats, like one of our value propositions. It's like this isn't a scalable thing, and that's awesome. That's so good. Because like you don't want that sort of translation to be like infinitely like Google level scalable, because it's just not going to be like how people actually speak. Like it's absolutely just not that way. And like that's what we want to teach. And going back like a second, I was going to say this about like what you were saying, Ulrik, in terms of like what's our next thing? Like how do we sort of like, how are we guided by what it is we want to build? The way that I see it is kind of like, I want people who are learning Spanish to feel comfortable using the Spanish and to feel rewarded when they do. And I think that comes in the part of like, this is kind of a strong term, but like kind of destigmatizing bad Spanish. Like we've had the idea of like, oh yeah, we'll have these videos between speakers, and it would be cool if one of the speakers was like someone like us. Like I'm probably like a B2 Spanish. Like I can speak and like express most things I want to, but like not that well. And like that is great to hear as a student, if only to be like, oh, this person doesn't sound great, but they're having a conversation in Spanish. Like that's awesome. And like we want to show people like you can get there soon. Just keep listening, just keep listening and reading. And in terms of like the gamification, I think what we could do instead of that is provide really great opportunities for people to use the Spanish that they've learned on Leerly, if only to like, we've had ideas around private forums and discussions on articles in Spanish with native speakers, and just giving the opportunity to be like, hey, this is that gamification. Like we want that rush, that dopamine to be like, yo, I just communicated an idea to a Spanish person in their language. Like that is so exciting. If you don't think it's exciting, you're probably not going to like Leerly, because like it's made by people who think that's so exciting. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to like throw that in there.
No, that's great. I mean, I detect that conveying relatability is a big thing you guys have there, and that's very important because I wrote a while ago separately in my writing on the blog about one effective way entrepreneurs can get hold of their customers is through relatability. Ultimately, selling them on a vision, right? It's I mentioned the Queen's Gambit in that piece because it connected with young girls and women who are like, I see in myself a champion chess player, which was not typical for, it's been male dominated. So, it gave them a vision of a highly achieving version of himself. And it seems like that's kind of what you're conveying here as well. It's like, this is you sitting down, having a fluent conversation in Spanish, with a native Spanish speaker. It's possible. Here's the path to do it. You can become, something you're very excited about, as you put it, James, a fluent Spanish speaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. Or not even fluent, right? Like right. Just be able to like whatever your end goal is for learning Spanish. Like we want you to be able to like incorporate some elements of like automatic language growth and comprehensible input, like. But yeah, and then give the user the freedom to decide what they do with that tool, like how they use it, how often they use it. They're probably using, like I would recommend to any of our users, like in fact, I've been thinking we should do this, is publish a list of like, here are other great resources that are similar, like podcasts.
Yeah.
Listen to vloggers. There's a handful of amazing intermediate Spanish vloggers who make content specifically for people learning at like a B1, B2 level. Like, all of these things will come together to form that strategy, and the end goal being, like I said, whatever you personally want out of it. If it's fluency, amazing. If it's to be able to order at a restaurant, like totally. Although Duolingo might actually succeed there. Like you could probably learn that on Duolingo. But if that's any questions, you're in over your head.
That's a really, really powerful point too, and that touches back on the sort of organic marketing piece and like the mission statement, which is really helping people learn a language, which sounds simple, but if you're a company that's trying to compete, then you immediately destroy that mission statement. You put yourself away from it because you're not really working for the benefit of the user. It's like being in finance, but not being a fiduciary. You're not really required to help someone, increase their money as much as possible. By recommending other resources, I think is a great example. And it shows in the way we market to customers on the Facebook learning groups, for instance. If I say, Leerly is a premier language learning platform, we're the absolute best. If you use us, you will succeed. That's not honest. That's not true. I think we could help you get there. There's lots of platforms online and content online that will be very useful to you. And I think people respond to that level of honesty and knowing that it gives you a lot more confidence that you're getting the best product and you're getting the best materials. If our goal is to really teach you Spanish or teach you a language, which sounds very simple, but is very powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely engenders trust. These guys say, hey, look, as part of we're the value we're offering, we're sending you elsewhere. It's well, okay, I believe these guys mean what they say. So it definitely helps build trusting relationships there. And and it's an important point I think you touched on, not to be overly concerned with the competition. I've heard it. A lot of the guys at Y Combinator say good companies, aren't murdered, they commit suicide. Meaning it's not, it's through your own, and I don't mean you, but the universal use bad business practices that cause a company to go under, not because they were doing a great job and they got swallowed up by the competition. I don't know, maybe like a small software vendor gets the rug pulled out from under them by Microsoft. Those instances notwithstanding, but yeah, I mean, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but towards your point, like, don't worry too much about the competition. Show people the other resources, build that trust, and everything will work itself out. Well, that's great. One thing I ask everybody that I'm really curious about, because balancing work and life is always challenging as an entrepreneur. I mean, maybe you don't put in 100 hours week after week like Elon, because I don't know how you do that and actually survive. But you're gonna work a lot. It's gonna come up at weird times. It's gonna kind of throw a wrench in the machinery, so to speak. So I'm just curious how you guys are attempting to strike that balance.
It's funny because a lot of the heart of Leerly for us is to strike that balance, is to have something that's generating revenue that we can live on without breaking our backs, and then we can spend our time working on projects that we're really passionate about. Similar to Leerly, and produce our best work and go to sleep thinking and excited about that. And I did leave my formal job at McKinsey & Company last December or 2019 for that exact reason. I was working extreme hours. Last project I was flying to Seattle every week from Boston. I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m., get on a plane, get back at 1 a.m. on Thursday. And I was not enjoying myself. Yeah, there's lots of smart people and it was engaging work, but it's got to be similar to being at Tesla. Where they want to hire people that don't have families that are going to work that hard. And that's not what life is about, unless that is truly what you want to do with all your time. So the heart of this project for us is to buy that freedom.
Interesting.
I think in terms of having, because I work as a full-time software engineer right now. So like, I think when it comes to balancing trying to start this project and working and living like a normal human life, I think the biggest thing, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, is just like I'll work on Leerly when my other like needs are met. Like I've exercised, like, because I sit at my desk all day. I gotta exercise first. I gotta make sure I have a good meal. Like, I want to talk to my girlfriend for a little while. It's like, let me do all that. And then whatever time I have at the end of the day to fit Leerly in, like, that's where that goes. But to me, it's not sustainable to be prioritizing that sort of work over basic, like health needs. Like I said, did I exercise? Did I have enough time to like cook a meal? Like, and so far that's worked out. Like, it's worked out great. If it comes to a point where it's going to require more attention, which is inevitable, and hopefully it will soon, because that would mean we're growing quickly.
Yeah,
I'll have to figure out what that's going to be. But for right now, it's definitely just sort of being cognizant of my hierarchy of needs, so to speak. I'm not getting too stressed about making sure I'm working on Leerly. It's nice, at the very least, I do try to do like a little thing a day, even if it's like, oh, there's just like one CSS problem, like this button is blue and it should be green. Like, I'll just hop on real quick and I do that, and lo and behold, I'm on there for 30 minutes hacking on something. Yeah, like the next feature I want to release or something. So
James is also being humble in that regard. He's built this platform extremely fast and pushes out an incredible amount of updates.
Yes, I work so hard.
From my end, it's amazing.
As a non-techie, it's sure it would amaze me as well. I've dabbled in programming, and it's those languages are harder for me to learn than Spanish. So trust me, I'll color me impressed as well. I found that's budgeting time. James, and keeping track of priorities, that I get. Definitely, it's of course incredibly important. Ulrik, I found your answer really interesting. It was so counterintuitive. Like, you stepped out of a regular job, a job to and to get more work-life balance in your entrepreneurial pursuits, which I don't think too many entrepreneurs can say. So that's a very unique experience you've got there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was really just reiterating that it does come down to that work-life balance piece, and finding that working smarter, not harder, and using my time really effectively. So if Leerly or any similar project succeeds, the value output, just if you're just looking at money, it's actually much higher than breaking my back at a McKinsey & Company or JP Morgan or something similar, a very large firm. So that it is smarter in some regards, but I'll let you know how it goes.
I like the idea of
thesis.
I like the idea of selling it as like, oh, I'm just, I'm being strategic, and like this is actually my strategy to make sure I can work in Leerly as much as possible in the long run. Whereas in reality, like, I'm just a lazy person and don't like to work very hard. So I'm just like, oh, I should really cook a 2-hour meal before I sit down to Leerly. Like, I'll focus so much better. And like, but hey, that's working. So
I am inherently lazy at things I don't want to do. And I think that's part of my journey. If I care about something, I'm going to work extremely hard and put in those hours and go to sleep thinking about it. It's really that imagination piece, and you just produce
I hope no
the value of
it.
They're gonna be the value increase is so high.
I usually find, like, normally would find excuses to put off working out or something, but then when you're an entrepreneur, it's like, all right, working out becomes the excuse to put off really hard work on building this and that. So it's habits that follow you no matter where you go. All right, I just have one last question, really. Do you guys have any words of advice for fellow entrepreneurs, both those working on their projects or those looking forward to doing so?
When do you want to go?
Sure.
Yeah, you go.
From a purely strategic project point of view, focus on something that solves a real problem, and that's commonly said, but make sure that there's a real pain point that people are feeling that you're solving for them and making easier and cheaper and whatever it is. Even if you have a product that seems very cool, but you're building it and it's starting to feel amorphous and you're really trying to find that fit or that value add, I think you're going about it wrong. Focus on that value add from the get-go. I think that's what really separates Leerly from all of the rest of our projects.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, you're right. It's definitely said a lot to, focus on problems, pain points and stuff like that, but it's timeless wisdom because people have an easy way of losing sight of that. So definitely important to reiterate. James, I'd love to, hear your take on that question as well.
Yeah, mine, I think, would be, and this is like totally, I don't mean this in any way as being universally true, but like, you should probably find somebody who can complement your skill set because there are such glaring blind spots in sort of like what one thinks that they will be good at or what they can do. And like, I think I don't know if I actually told this to you a couple weeks ago, Ulrik, or if I was just thinking it, but I was like, I'm so glad I pulled you in when I did, because like all of that marketing, outreach, growth stuff, I'm so bad at. Like, I want to get better at it, but I'm so bad at it, and I don't even like think to be doing it. Like in my mind, it's like, oh, like I should be coding, like I should be building Leerly. It's like hard for me to pull out of that mode and enter like salesman mode. So that has been. It feels like magic because like I'll just be sitting at my desk doing nothing. And then Ulrik will be in Slack being like, I'm talking to this university, like I'm gonna try to get like a license for them. Like this is crazy. I'll be just like, oh my God, things are happening. And I'm just sitting there. Like, that's crazy. Like that's magic. Like this other human being is trying to achieve the same goal that we have. Like this is amazing. So yeah, that's been incredible. I like looking back at every project I've ever tried to do on my own. It's like sort of embarrassing how like obviously that wasn't going to work. Like obviously I'm lacking those skills and I don't have somebody to show me that I'm lacking them because they're not setting that bar of like, what does it mean to go out and do sales? What does it mean to be marketing your project? It's like, it's hard to even know that if you don't have somebody who is doing that, you know, with you or for you on your sort of same project or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely is universal advice right there. I mean, I hear whether it's Y Combinator or others, it's like find a good co-founder, someone whose skills complement your own. You know, if this is your baby, right? It's good to have two parents, a real relationship. You know, to make it work. So not that it can't be done. Solopreneurs can do it just like single parents can do it.
Definitely.
But it helps to have two. It helps to have complementary sets of skills and perspectives. I, for one, I couldn't imagine going into something without a coder, a tech guy like yourself to head the tech department, oversee the product while I do like the business end of things. So I can totally relate to what you're saying. Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time and telling me all about Leerly, especially because you know, we didn't know each other before this, so I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys cook up.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
It's been so cool. Thank you so much, Eric. Definitely.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is a cool experience for us.
I'm glad you enjoyed it as much as I did.